a goby, a small fish, feeding underwater in the Philippines. And there is another goby, this time in slow motion, also taking a bite of the sand. What does this have to do with a grown man trying to eat marshmallows underwater? Well, it explains something about hydrodynamics of fish feeding. In order to understand, let's take a step back.
Hey, Matt, good morning.
Hi.
So I think it's safe to say you're a pretty good looking guy.
Oh, thank you.
And you're a smooth talker.
Oh.
So I'm sure a lot of ladies ask you for your Reynolds number in the Philippines.
All the time.
Yeah. So what do you tell them?
Oh, I tell them it's about 4 million.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's a Reynolds number?
Reynolds number. Oh, I have this right here on the whiteboard where we're talking about Reynolds number.
Yeah.
Which is essentially a relationship between your inertia and your viscosity
When you're swimming, right?
when you're swimming.
Yeah. So recently, a very interesting paper was published about very small fishes with very small Reynolds numbers, probably around 1 or less, feeding. And the authors argued that a lot of these larval, tiny fishes, starve to death because feeding at these very low Reynolds numbers is very hard. And somebody likens this kind of feeding at low Reynolds numbers to eating marshmallows underwater without hands. So you want to give that a shot?
We're gonna eat the marshmallows underwater
Without hands.
without hands.
Okay, how do you think that's gonna go?
I think it's gonna be comical.
Okay, let's see.
Now, when we multiply density with speed and length and divide it by viscosity, or we divide inertia by viscosity, we get the Reynolds number. What's inertia? It's the tendency of a mass to keep going once it's set into motion. And what is viscosity? This is the adhesion of molecules in a liquid to each other. So here there is honey dripping down. Obviously honey is a very viscous liquid. Now, the important insight from fluid dynamic is that viscosity is not absolute. If you're very small, the same liquid appears more viscous to you. So again, we have the Reynolds number is the force acting on a little car divided by the forces in the honey. Now, George Stokes was one of the great pioneers of fluid dynamics, and he first really came up with the Reynolds number. And then, of course, we have Osborne Reynolds, after whom the number is named, and he did a great wealth of experiments of fluids flowing in tubes, and he did a lot of very insightful theory, so hence this number is named after him. When talking about the Reynolds number, we should definitely mention Ed Purcell, who won a Nobel Prize for work in a different field of physics later, and he wrote a very insightful paper about small Reynolds numbers and how they relate to biology. Now, the title of this famous and really well-written paper is Life at Low Reynolds Numbers. It's from 1976. So, in this paper, Purcell looks at the question, what is the difference whether you're the size of a whale or just even a human or a bacterium? Now here we have a swimmer and a bacterium. The inertial forces and the viscous forces play a very different role in each case. So in the case of a swimmer, the Reynolds number is about 10,000 or much higher even. But in the case of a bacterium, the Reynolds number is much less than 1. Here he gives a value of 3 times 10 to the minus 5th. Now in this case, the viscous forces completely dominate. That means fluid movement is completely reversible. So he puts it as time does not matter. So you move in one direction and the fluid moves, and then you move back in another direction and the fluid moves back the exact opposite of the way it moved at first. So if you have a scallop which opens and closes, if that is a large scallop, it can swim like this, but a small scallop cannot, because the fluid motion will just go back and forth and there will be no turbulences and the scallop will not move in one direction. So if we have a large marine animal like this shark, then we are having swimming which is dominated by inertia. If you're having these gobies, or if you're having even smaller marine animals like fish larvae, then the swimming is dominated by viscosity. So on Twitter/X, I came across a really interesting paper recently, which is called Hydrodynamic Starvation in First Feeding Larval Fishes by Gina and Holzman. And the authors test what happens to very small fishes when they're feeding, and they're feeding in a low Reynolds number regime, where essentially liquid movement, or seawater movement, is reversible. So they used recordings of high-speed cameras of these larval sea breams. And then they found that the sea breams have a very low probability of successfully catching food. And this increases when the fish is just growing a little bit. So the tiniest fishes have a very low feeding probability of less than 10% per effort. So these tiny fishes also have really small Reynolds numbers, of course. And then they also try to directly modify the Reynolds number by modifying the viscosity of the seawater by just adding dextran, which just makes the seawater more viscous. So they argue that a lot of very small fish die, and this is well established in ecology, because of their unfavorable fluid dynamics. So more than 99% of juvenile tiny fish larvae perish before they reach adulthood, and the authors argue that this is because of fluid dynamics. So very interesting. Then also on Twitter X, somebody else made a really good analogy, which is that the feeding of these small fishes is like eating marshmallows underwater without hands. So this is something we wanted to try ourselves.
Mister, what's your take on fluid dynamics? Yeah. Does a small Reynolds number... Okay, not interested in fluid dynamics, huh?
Seriously, don't take your scuba regulator out of your mouth for a joke underwater. We did this in shallow waters and we're instructors. Now, here is a marshmallow, and I'm going to release it below me, and now it's floating up. Am I going to be able to catch it with my mouth only? Well, it's somewhere stuck on my face. I need to reposition. It's still not in my mouth. And here we go. I actually managed to eat a marshmallow underwater without using my hands. And this might have been the highlight of 30 years of scuba diving. Now, this didn't always go so smooth. These are some near misses. Just like myself, my friend Matt is an experienced scuba diver and an instructor, and here we go. Is he gonna be able to eat this marshmallow? No. But we have another one. So let's try again. Now, how would Matt do as a larval fish with a small Reynolds number? Here he didn't even manage to place the marshmallow under his mouth, and here we go again. Very close to his mouth is the release, and nevertheless it floats away. So I would say that, to stay with the analogy between larval fishes, which are struggling to feed because of difficult fluid dynamics at small sizes, my friend Matt would belong to the 99% plus, which do not make it past the larval stage, and rather which starve to death at a very small size. Now there's another effort, even with a starting position very close to his mouth, he doesn't manage to get the marshmallow in. And again, this is not a beginner diver. This is a guy who has been in the water almost every week for many years. And it's hard what we're doing now. There's one more effort, and not even with such a close starting position does he have success. Now, did we mess up the environment? No. So marshmallows are just sugar and gelatin. This is something we saw on the same dive. This is a wrasse in a discarded diaper. So this small fish is dealing with a small Reynolds number, and at the same time it's dealing with sharing the planet with humanity.
How did it go with the marshmallow eating underwater?
Eating marshmallows underwater is not easy.
So it's probably safe to say it's hard.
It was difficult. I don't think I was successful at all.
So you didn't eat a single one?
No.
I think I ate one. So the gentleman in the back is selling ice cream.
Yeah.
But it's actually very good ice cream. It's meant to be eaten on land.
Yes, not underwater.
Yeah, so
What do you think the Reynolds number of ice cream is?
Yeah, as applied fish hydrodynamics researchers, do we sympathize with the thought that a lot of juvenile fishes might starve to death because of their feeding, which is as hard as eating marshmallows underwater?
Potentially.
Yeah, so, based on our experimentation, we support this hypothesis.
I would say yes.
Cool.
Plausible.
Cool.
So, in the future, when you see tiny fish, you should be aware what kind of difficult struggle they're going through when they're just trying to get a piece of food into their mouths. I hope you enjoyed this. If so, you will probably also enjoy my books, one of which is Your Brain on Diving, which is about the neuroscience of the human brain when we're underwater. And the other one, guess what? It's about small fishes. It's called The Lives of Gobies. And gobies are this very large family of fascinating fishes. Check them out.